Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'll make a few opening comments, and then Jay will provide an update on some measures from on behalf of the City of Winnipeg's Public Service. I want to begin today, as we always do, by acknowledging we're on Treaty 1 territory in the traditional homeland of the Métis. Today, we're grieving the first local loss of life as a result of COVID-19. We're in this together, and we're grieving together. On behalf of my family, on behalf of City Council, and on behalf of all Winnipeggers, I want to offer our deepest condolences to the friends and families of the deceased. The tragic news of this loss is a stark reminder of the seriousness of the global pandemic that we're facing together. And it reinforces, for me, how essential it is for all of us as Winnipeggers to diligently follow the direction of our healthcare and emergency professionals. Our community will get through this by remaining vigilant and supporting each other. I want to remind Winnipeggers that the province of Manitoba and Manitoba Health in particular is the lead organization for health matters within the province of Manitoba. We will continue to work collaboratively with the provincial government to support the direction from Manitoba Health, whose efforts continue to support the health and the well-being of our citizens. Let me say that all Winnipeggers appreciate the efforts of our provincial government, and in particular, the outstanding healthcare professionals working in our city. We continue to work with the province. I'm having regular calls with Minister Squires, and I'd like to thank her for the ongoing dialogue. During these calls, I'm underscoring the urgent need for the provincial government to do more to protect our most vulnerable citizens, including the clients of women's shelters, Winnipeggers affected by homelessness, and those living with addictions. I'm also raising the urgent need for the province to provide immediate relief to businesses whose operations have been affected by provincial directions related to COVID-19. For example, April 1st is next week. There are businesses in our community that will not be able to pay their rents to commercial landlords. Some of those businesses have asked me to advocate for the province to provide support. I'm doing that on a daily basis in a collaborative manner. In terms of the federal government, I've had regular calls with Canada's big city mayors and Deputy Prime Minister Freeland and many other federal ministers to underscore the need for the federal government to provide greater supports to businesses, our vulnerable community and municipalities, because liquidity will be an issue for municipalities going forward. I want to thank Prime Minister Justin Trudeau for his measured and responsive leadership during this global pandemic. And I want to thank the federal government for significant relief measures announced to date. Of course, more work remains, and I'll continue to advocate on a national level in a collaborative manner. In a few moments, Jay Shaw will be updating you on several changes to city services and operations, some of which are specifically intended to assist our residents and businesses that have been affected by this COVID-19 crisis. The public service has been working constantly to respond to the ever-changing environment we are working within. I'm pleased to see changes to parking and better alignment with other safety measures the province has provided direction on. I'd like to highlight the changes with regards to temporary loading zones, which will provide some relief to restaurants who are increasingly focused on working with food couriers to pick up food orders. I also want to advise that today I will be calling a special meeting of council for next Friday, April 3rd at 9:30 a.m. And this is so that council can consider a report to implement a property and business tax deferral program. At this special meeting of council, I'll also ask council to consider declaring a state of local emergency under the Emergency Measures Act. I believe this is a necessary measure to support the efforts of our residents, the provincial government, and the healthcare sector in our collective fight against COVID-19. Declaring a state of local emergency would provide the necessary tools for the city to protect essential services. This declaration, if approved by council, would allow for the city to crack down on price gouging for vital supplies, potentially allow the city to use private buildings such as hotels to house vulnerable people, and restrict access to areas of the city that may be contaminated or, where possible, presence of contamination exists. I look forward to this discussion with Council next week, and Jay Shaw will now provide you with a detailed update with regards to the city's response to COVID-19. Over to you, Jay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good afternoon. My name is Jay Shaw. I am the Assistant Chief of Emergency Management for the City of Winnipeg. The City of Winnipeg remains committed to maintaining essential services while balancing the health, safety, and well-being of our employees and residents. To reinforce new recommendations put in place today by the province of Manitoba, limiting gatherings to no more than 10 people, the city is suspending all permits issued to special events and festivals until the end of June. Effective Saturday, March 28th, we will also be closing amenities inside city-owned parks, including all play structures and picnic shelters. We are keeping city-owned parks open, but are encouraging everyone to continue practicing safe social distancing while enjoying these spaces. To support local businesses, the city will be working with local biz groups to establish temporary curbside pickup locations in select locations throughout the downtown and the Exchange District. These curbside pickup locations will allow patrons to park for free for 15 minutes while they are picking up food or retail items. In addition, the city will be offering 1 hour free parking at all parking meters throughout Winnipeg. In residential areas with parking time restrictions, the city will not be enforcing the parking time limit restrictions to accommodate employees who are now required to be home for longer periods of time due to self-isolation and work from home requirements. All other parking restrictions will still be in place. In addition, we have been working closely with Winnipeg Harvest as we understand they have a high need for additional volunteers. We will be redeploying up to 25 employees from community services to help sort food and stock hampers. All of these measures will be monitored. At this time, we can take your questions.
All right, we will go through the list, and first up is Sean Cavanaugh from CBC.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. In light of the provincial direction today, can you tell where you're thinking as with respect to Winnipeg Transit, allowing people to get on the bus in any groups, whether or not you're considering cutting down scheduling and routes, and will there be any changes there?
Okay. I'll start. Good to hear from you, Sean. I'll just start by saying that the operations of Winnipeg Transit are incredibly important to keep the city moving and to move folks to places like hospitals where many individuals are working. I just use that as one example, and so ensuring that the operations of transit can continue is incredibly important. That being said, the directions from Manitoba Health are being followed, not just with respect to transit operations, but city services overall, including the recommendations and the orders that we're hearing being made today. Maybe Jay could provide some further commentary.
Yeah, in regards to transit, we're continually assessing and taking a look at what we need to do. There have been measures put in place with operators having signs on buses to remind our riders to be able to use and practice social distancing. We all know ridership at this point is down as many folks continue to work from home. What we're evaluating right now is any risks and what changes may be required, but at this time we are in the limits, and we are working with the province if any changes need to be made.
I guess I have one follow-up here, and that would be, Mr. Mayor, with respect to declaring a state of local emergency. You mentioned cracking down on price gouging. Have you seen any of that? And could you just go into a little more detail as to what specific powers that gives the City of Winnipeg under that order?
Yeah, I appreciate the question because we've seen cities across Canada bring in states of local emergency, and at this stage today, as you can see with some of the changes that are being made, the city has the tools it currently needs, but we do expect the situation to get worse before it gets better. One of the reasons for declaring a state of local emergency is to help amplify the seriousness of the situation and to support the efforts of our provincial government. Their messaging is not reaching everybody, and we want to help with that. And if declaring a state of local emergency can help underscore that when the province is saying that you should self-isolate when you return from abroad, that means you should do it. We are hearing situations where people are not following those directions from Manitoba Health. And again, the declaration of a state of local emergency, as we've seen in other cities, can be used to help underscore the messaging from the province. With respect to the examples that I used, we do want to ensure that the public service has the tools it needs so that it can act in a timely manner when and if some of the examples that I cited are seen in the community. I have not seen price gouging myself. It hasn't been raised. I'm not sure if it's been raised to you, but that's one example of where we could take action. The other could be, the power is needed to secure real estate in order to protect our most vulnerable or where there's contamination. But those are examples of situations that when and if they arise after that declaration, at least the city would have the tools to support the province's efforts in a much more time-sensitive manner than we might otherwise have. But I think it's important to report that that declaration isn't being made today. I think what's important is council should consider it. We've seen councils convene to consider states of emergency. I've certainly heard from many of my council colleagues, some of whom think that we should make that declaration. I think we need to have that dialogue as a council. And my own view is I want to make sure that the public service has the tools that they need in real time going forward. And that's why I'm comfortable simply packaging the consideration of the property tax and business relief at the same time as a declaration of a state of local emergency.
All right, we will go to Mohammed at Radio Canada.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question about special events and festivals. You suspend all permits. Can you just give more details on this decision?
Sure, I think that one might be best. If it's okay with you, Mohammed, I'll let Jay maybe take that one, and if you have follow-up, I can weigh in afterwards.
Hi, Mohammed. The reason for doing this is to be able to provide our folks in Winnipeg that are starting to organize and get ready for potential spring events to have that time to plan appropriately. We know that we're in this as a city and a province to potentially be social distancing for many weeks and into months. And it's important for us to make sure that we get the message out that everyone needs to be prepared. And in doing so, that should help some of our organizers and event planners with their events coming up so that they don't have any areas of concerns or that they know where they stand so that they can, potentially plan accordingly.
So does that mean that you're expecting that this crisis could last at least until the end of June?
Yes.
Great, thank you very much.
Over to Jeff from CTV.
Okay, hi, Mr. Mayor. With the fact that you were calling the special council meeting for next Friday, does that mean then the public service has then figured out a way to defer business and property taxes, and you'll be voting on a report? Has that been worked through? Because I know the motion that you passed was to look at feasibility.
There's a yes and no answer here, Jeff. So the public service is still working on an administrative report for council's consideration. What they've assured me is that report will be available for council consideration and for public dissemination before next Friday. and I wanted to provide council with as much notice as possible so that we can convene next Friday. That report is in response to council's direction when the budget was passed. There was direction that was voted on in the budget to request the public service to prepare a report and provide that report for council's consideration within 30 days. We will, based on the timeline I'm setting out today, we'll be considering that in half the time. So within 2 weeks from the budget vote, I hope that we will be able to approve a relief package that will provide some assistance to property owners as well as businesses. And so we'll discuss and debate that administrative report when it's ready, and council will consider that next Friday.
So what you're saying is you can't say at this point if it'll be a straight deferral or some other relief measure?
Correct. We need to see the administrative report. I know that they've been working diligently on the work, and there's ongoing dialogue. For example, we've had dialogue with the province of Manitoba on how a deferral plan would work in relation to our requirement under provincial legislation to collect and remit education taxes on behalf of school divisions. Again, like all of these things, we're working collaboratively with the province. We need to be mindful that there could be cash flow and liquidity issues for school divisions. And so we want to make sure that while our public service reviews and provides consideration to council based on our legal requirements, we're trying to make sure the lines of communication are open with the province, because there's implications for other stakeholders.
Jonas from City.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Shaw, thank you for your time, guys. I'll pass on this round. Keep it moving. Thank you, guys.
Okay, thanks.
Joanne from the Winnipeg Free Press.
Hi. I'm just wondering, for the price gouging, how exactly could you crack down on that if you declared a state of emergency?
You want to take it?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so before Jay can give you an answer to that specific, but what I'll say is these are tools that at present we don't feel we need to be exercising, but as the situation worsens as we expect, we want to make sure that those tools are there when and if needed in a timely way.
Yeah, the examples that were provided were provided so that folks have an understanding of what the potential powers under the Emergency Act gives us. And in terms of price gouging, what it allows you to do is set prices for goods if required. We've seen in other disasters throughout North America where that issue becomes prevalent. We haven't seen anything like that so far that I'm aware of in Winnipeg, but I can tell you that when we look forward to where we're going over the next weeks and months, the city just wants to be prepared to be able to take any action required to protect its citizens and the essential services, and this is just one of those items.
Okay. And as a follow-up on something else that was asked earlier, the new provincial limit on public gatherings to no more than 10 people, does that affect any, I know you mentioned playgrounds earlier, but will that be affecting any other additional city services or staff changes?
I believe there's some exemptions inside of that, and we are working with the province to be able to assess what the details are of that. But as it stands right now, we're following the orders from Dr. Roussin and Manitoba Health, and we'll assess as we move forward. Day by day, hour by hour, things change, and we're just getting this information. We knew there was a possibility that it could go down from 50 to 10, and we have had some thought processes around that in terms of what it affects the city, but at this time we'll get you more information if there's any new news on that.
Joanne, if I can maybe just add to that, I mean, one of the challenges that we are having right now is, you know, the public is hearing messaging from many officials at multiple levels of government saying, go home. At the same time, there are many services and business operations and government operations that need to continue to provide people with food and provide people with income and all of the things that we want to see continue. And so we have been urging other levels of government, and we're working to support their messaging to add clarity with respect specifically about which businesses can and should continue to operate. What we've been advised is that, of course, operations can continue provided the social distancing practices are being respected. And we're doing that all within that direction from the province of Manitoba. But we're going to continue to work with the province to get the message out that there are situations where you're going to have that social distancing act as one of the primary protectors of people's safety in certain environments.
Over to Scott at the Winnipeg Sun.
Hi, Scott Billick from Winnipeg Sun here. Why not just call this state of emergency now? Why wait, upwards of a week to do that instead of just doing it now and ensuring that those powers are in place over the next week?
A couple reasons. I've regular conversations with Jay and our public service who are advising that at present, as of today, they don't feel they need it to make some of the changes that we're announcing today. But there's a likelihood that those tools may be needed as the situation worsens. I also think it's important that council consider these things. In the past, when we had the storm event about 6 months ago, feels like about 6 years ago, but when we had that storm, I made the declaration under the power and authority that is vested in the mayor because it was needed to be made in a very time-sensitive way. And the ability to reconvene council at that time was significantly compromised. And so I took it upon myself to make the declaration. I don't feel that's necessary under these circumstances. We're not being advised that there is an immediate need for those powers to be exercised. But also, I think council should have the time to put their mind to it and consider it. And so we wanted to, and I wanted to provide council with a week's advance notice that we'll consider that, and then we'll make that decision as a council.
And just my follow-up, people
Sure.
have been home now for the better part of a week and a half. Kids have been off school now for over a week. Why today? Like, why not the relaxed residential stuff, maybe a week or even 2 weeks ago? And will there be forgiveness for people who have gotten tickets over the last little while? Will those people be able to, fight those tickets or have some sort of forgiveness based on the dates that they were handed out?
Okay. The short answer is we've heard those issues. We've been listening, and we're assessing. So stay tuned, and then we'll get you some more details on what some more actions that the city is undergoing to be able to assist Winnipeggers.
The one thing I'll just add to that is even on residential parking, for example, I'm very pleased the public service is doing something on the residential parking front to provide some assistance to those that are self-isolating or are working from home. Obviously that'll need to be monitored for unintended consequences, and changes will need to be made as needed on all of these measures. And so the one thing I appreciate about the public services response to COVID, and you look at how much has changed even in the last week, is they're working in dialogue with the province of Manitoba, as am I, to make sure that we're trying to be in as lockstep with the province as possible. So today you'll see the province and the city have both made changes to parks and how we're operating parks. And we're trying to do as much as possible in concert and coordination with the province, as well as the federal government, so that citizens can better understand what it is they should and should not be doing.
Yeah, no, I understand. I was just wondering, what's going to hit people's pockets here are $60 parking tickets or whatever. I guess that's my question is, will those be forgiven? That's what I want to know.
Sure. I think for the time being, I'd like people to use their money to go support local restaurants this weekend. And if the relaxed parking rules and the increased loading zone outside Exchange and downtown restaurants helps facilitate, if you have the dollars to support local restaurants, I'd urge Winnipeggers, consider if you have the means, ordering some takeout and supporting some of our local restaurants. They're hurting right now.
All right, we will go back to Sean Kavanaugh from CBC. Do you have any further questions?
Sure. Assistant Chief Shaw, how specifically is Winnipeg preparing for the worst case scenario? I mean, obviously a local state of emergency is a move on the road to that, but if the healthcare system is overwhelmed by this, what specific emergency preparedness plans are you putting into place? You know, I'm thinking about providing city buildings for emergency hospitals or ice rinks. I hate to be morbid, but you know, potentially for more. Are those plans getting formed up?
The short answer is everything you mentioned is things that we do in our advanced planning meetings, and we continue to think about that. I kind of joke sometimes that we're the professional worriers, and that's what we do, and we think about things in long-term planning cycles. I can tell you that we work with the province, we work with the federal government, and we look at modeling, and we look at situational awareness, and then we adjust our plans as required, and that we're never more than a couple days out of being able to know sort of, you know, what potentially could come. It doesn't take much to be able to see where other Canadian provinces and cities are, and American cities and European cities and countries. We need to be prepared, and I believe that we're working diligently to make sure that we have the advanced planning to make any decisions that are required.
My follow-up on a little bit lighter note, we're all feeling folks' anxieties, Mr. Mayor. Would you consider closing down Wellington Crescent, Scotia, and Wolseley Avenue to vehicular traffic earlier than its original May start in order to allow people to get out on those streets and just walk?
It's a great question. I know those and other active transportation options are actively being considered by the public service. Councillor Orlico has been advocating for Wellington Crescent, and I know as the weather gets nicer, you know, one of the reasons why the parks are remaining open but the playgrounds are closed is because we're trying collectively as governments to ensure that while we're telling people get outside and social distance, we're not shrinking the available public spaces that they can spread out. And so it's something that is actively being considered by the public service. I've certainly had discussions with the public service, and stay tuned, I guess. The one thing I will say on your first question, though, Sean, the one thing I have to say I've been really impressed is. You know, the federal government, the accessibility and the dialogue with our Deputy Prime Minister, our provincial government, you know, much of my discussion has been with the Minister Squires. All governments are taking this very seriously, and I mean, this is perhaps one of the most disruptive occurrences to happen to our country since the Second World War, and so the scope of work that's happening by all levels of government is profound, and it's been something else to see behind the scenes the diligence and the hard work that's happening by our provincial and our federal partners, as well as our own municipal government. I want to assure Winnipeggers that everybody is working as hard as they can in real time to protect the health and safety of our citizens. And Winnipeggers should be really proud of the work that's being undertaken by their public service. I'm always proud of our workforce, and I'm particularly proud right now of the leadership that Jay is providing and members of our public service are providing under difficult circumstances. And should take this opportunity to applaud our healthcare workers right now, who we're really proud of.
All right, we'll go to Mohammed at Radio Canada. Anything further?
No question for me. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff, CTV.
Yeah, very quickly, Jay, I still haven't got an answer to this question from the province or anywhere. How and who enforces do not go on that play structure, do not go in that picnic area, and what is the fine?
So the city isn't putting any fines at this point. We're just closing them. I can tell you that we're looking at doing some messaging and some signage. Enforcement is challenging, and it's more about the messaging. We will be looking at potential enforcement measures in terms of what that looks like, but I think it's more about communication at this point. People know that they need to social distance and use physical distancing. Moms and dads are out there right now, and they know that they got to keep their kids safe. And what we're seeing is a need to support those initiatives, and that was one of the reasons that we did it in lockstep with the province to make sure that we're aligned. And I can tell you that it wasn't a good feeling when I got friends and family members who have young kids and we're telling them to stay in the house. You don't have to stay in the house, but you gotta use the social distancing, and you gotta practice that. And it's got to be the new way of life right now. And we're gonna get through this together. And I recognize that some of those closures are gonna inhibit people's ability to be able to have recreation and activities, but it's the right step to keep people safe.
But do you put tape up around it? Is it just a sign? Like, is there a fence? Like, how do you do it?
More discussion to come on that in terms of what we need to do. All these decisions need to be monitored. I can tell you if there was a need or an issue that we'll address it. But I understand your concern. In other jurisdictions, I've seen all different types of enforcement, from tape, signs, social media, communication, and up into fencing. I'm not taking anything off the board right now. It's a wait-and-see approach. Right now, effective tomorrow, we're closing the play structures. Through messaging, we'll get some signs up, and then we'll take it from there, and we'll monitor how things go.
All right, Joanne at the Free Press.
Hi, so I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier. It's mostly related to the gathering risk, or was there another reason why you've now decided to close the playgrounds when you didn't want to earlier?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry. I just asked if is it just the new gathering limit that the province put out today that led you to close the playgrounds, or are there other reasons why that decision's been made now?
I wouldn't say there's other reasons. I can tell you that there's continual risk assessment being done daily in terms of what the next steps need to be. It was a major factor in terms of making sure that we were aligned with the province. And at this time, it was the right thing to do because of where we're going and how serious this is getting. We've seen an increase in the number of COVID calls or COVID-19 cases in Winnipeg and in the province. And our actions are measured, so we want to make sure that our actions are measured and accountable, and that we're doing the right thing.
Okay. And just as a follow-up, sort of a different topic, but still COVID-19 related, the City of Brandon announced that some water and waste staff are staying at their water treatment plant to ensure it keeps operating. I've heard so far Winnipeg not opting to do the same thing, so if you could explain why that decision was made.
Okay, so what the City of Brandon did was a measure to protect their water treatment plant. We're in dialogue with our water and waste department. I just have a ton of respect for the work that they do over there and the amount of knowledge and process that they do to be able to protect the drinking water for the City of Winnipeg. And what I can tell you is we're talking all the time about what measures we need to protect. Those are special skills, and we need to make sure that we protect those workers. Right now, nothing's off the table. I'm not saying that we're going to do it. I'm not saying that, but we'll continue to work with our water and waste department, and if those measures are required, we'll assess, and if we need to do that, that's what we're going to do.
Hey, Scott from Winnipeg Sun.
No, I'm good right now. Thank you, though.
Okay, Sean, anything left?
Mr. Mayor, are you contemplating layoffs of non-essential workers?
Well, that'd be a question for the public service. As you know, we've only got 4 employees who report to council, including our interim CAO, but that might be a question best asked of our public service. I'm not aware of anything pending right now, so but I'd let the public service speak to that.
Have you given consideration to, well, I've asked for and would hope to receive a list of what the city considers essential workers. Is such a list available?
I can tell you that when we look at our business continuity processes, we look at it through a lens of sort of operations and groupings and gatherings. So, for example, we consider water treatment plants, 911 centers, police and fire and EMS services to be essential. So therefore, I guess if you're saying would we consider those employees essential, the answer is yes. But there's many, many, many more. And our job is to protect our essential services, and that's probably my number 1 job in this activation, is to make sure that we're doing that.
I'll just say also, I mean, what citizens are looking for is they're looking for business continuity of government right now, and I had discussion today with business leaders, and what was asked directly of me was, do everything you can. What we're looking for is stability of provision of services from all governments to the greatest extent possible. There have been changes, and there has been certainly a paring down of some operations, as has been already previously communicated. But to the greatest extent, people need to, we need to make sure that the services are there, especially during these times, whether it be law enforcement, whether it be fire, paramedic, transit services, water, garbage collection. I mean, these are all pretty important services, whether people are working from home or not. And so we'll continue to provide those services as best we can while the public service is in dialogue with Manitoba Health on changes that we need to make within the workplace.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, Jeff from CTV, anything further?
No.
You're good. Joyanne, anything further?
Yeah, I'm wondering, just on the residential street parking, if we're waiving the fees there, but just on residential streets, how does that affect those living in apartments? Are you talking about streets with just single-family homes?
I believe right now the way it is working is if it's on a residential street where there's residential parking permitted, then the time limit on that is being expanded. If you can't park somewhere, you can't park somewhere. You can't park in front of a fire hydrant. You can't park and block other cars. Does that explain what's happening? I mean, people live in condominiums and apartments all over close to residential streets. They're eligible to park as long as they're inside the rules that we put out.
Okay. And then as far as transit and WFPS, both the unions related to those folks have asked for some changes. Is there any changes on that front at all?
I'm not aware of the changes being asked by Winnipeg. You said Winnipeg Police?
No, fire paramedic service, WFPS.
Oh, okay. The if it's in reference to changes that the unions made to operations, I believe our Chief John Lane is looking at that letter and the information that's come in, and if there's any changes operationally, we may be able to adjust and let you know. But I don't have any information on that at this time. And in response to, are you talking about transit union, ATU?
Yes. Yeah, that was the other one I mentioned, yeah.
Yeah, I know that the, our drivers have been provided the hand sanitizers that they asked for, and they're working with their management team to be able to increase any other safety measures that need to happen, but that's what I have for an update on that, is for what I know.
Okay, thank you.
Sean, do you have any further questions?
I don't.
Joyanne, you're good too?
Yeah.
All right, I think then we're concluded. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Have a good weekend, everyone. Stay healthy. Thanks.
You too.
Thanks, you too.
The chairperson has disconnected. The conference will now end. Le conférencier a raccroché. La conférence va maintenant se terminer.
Okay. Have a good weekend, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.